What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, please like and subscribe and let me know how you feel like this dungeon run went. Now, to get into this, we're running a 22 Mechagon Workshop. You'll notice here that I'm not actually doing the first pull solo. Reason for that is this week's fixes. They were spiteful and necrotic. We just felt like we should probably play this one safe, given the fact that the spitefuls, depending on when they spawn, they could end up 1 or 2 tapping me. So we all ended up going down together, stacking to try to kill as many as we could at a single time. We have this one last straggler here. But the reason why we're trying to be so efficient with these spitefuls is because when these first 2 bosses spawn here, if the spitefuls are up for too long, they actually have a good chance of resetting the boss and forcing you to go through the RP more than once. So if it is a spiteful week for you, it's definitely worth noting that you want to get those down as soon as possible. You'll also notice that we went ahead and baited to get No Mercy to charge towards the hammer. That actually makes it really easy to do one of 2 things. The first of which is get them grouped together so that you can have high uptime on both bosses. This is less important for the Platinum Pummeler just at this point in time, mainly because he still has his armor buff up. So I'm going to work my way around the room, and it takes 3 hammers to go ahead and knock off that armor buff, and we're already at 2 hammers already done. You'll notice that anytime the bosses come together, I linger for a little bit to let that happen, and then I also do my best to try to grab aggro on No Mercy whenever he's within range to kind of bait a charge towards me as well. So it's important to keep them together whenever you can, and again, it's important to go ahead and bait them so that the charge is not going off at a random DPS or a different member of the party that might be on the opposite end of the room from the Platinum Pummeler, especially once you've got at least 3 of the hammers down. 3 is kind of the minimum requirement needed here. You can go ahead and use all 4 hammers, which we certainly do as well. The focus should be on No Mercy at all times, and it's worth noting that during the vent jet, you need to be able to stand behind No Mercy so that you don't end up ticking out. The fire damage is absolutely insane during that phase, especially on Tyrannical. You may also have noticed that we've got a little gnome guy fighting here. If you've never seen that before, when the fight goes on after a certain period, the person who's kind of commentating the battle in the battle arena here ends up joining the fray. He doesn't do any damage or anything, at least not to the tank. So all you need to be aware of is that he's joined the arena, and as a tank, just go ahead and get that taunt and then finish off the boss. What we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and send our rogue ahead of the group. That rogue is going to go ahead and tricks me so that we're able to gather all 3 of these together. You'll notice I've got a Nathrezim and I've got these 2 crawlers. The reason why we want the 2 crawlers together is so that I can bait the direction in which their frontal goes in. That way we're not hitting any of the party with it. It's also worth noting that the seasonal affix, if you were not aware, does not scale with any other affix and has no interaction with any other affix. So the Nathrezim here is not able to give me any stacks of necrotic, it's just the 2 crawlers, so I'm never in any real danger here. Additionally, they do not spawn with spiteful. However, the volatile wastes certainly do. So the best thing you can do here is try to evenly get them down, and then be in a position where you can go off and hide so you don't take any damage. You can use a couple of different points to LOS throughout that tunnel there. You saw the first one that we used, just kind of a little indent in the wall. And then this is a great pillar for any kind of LOS as well. The only problem is that you will end up getting that crawler, and depending on the timing of his frontal, you might end up taking out one of your DPS, which our hunter just went down there. I also could be doing a better job of not getting so close to the LOS point because the spitefuls are spawning the second everything is dying, and so my DPS is being forced to move off of that pull that we're using to LOS, given the fact that spitefuls are spawning and tunneling on them. If I do a little bit better on this pull where I stay a little bit farther away and keep them positioned a little farther away, unfortunately we didn't kill them evenly, so I move a little too early, and so you have to LOS twice there. So the best thing you can do as a tank is just try to target the high health target. We go on to Zolgamox here, and it's worth noting that any group, regardless of comp, can skip Zolgamox. You can actually just go ahead and hug the wall, go around the pillar, and you won't aggro Zolgamox or this dog. So if you don't want to do Zolgamox in this dungeon, you feel like it's going to be inefficient, or you feel like you might be in danger of not timing if you have to spend a bunch of time on Zolgamox, that's certainly an option for you. But the group is doing a pretty good job of keeping the bats in control. We're interrupting every single one of the hypnosis so that no one gets MC'd, and we're taking care of Zolgamox and the dog at a pretty good clip. Zolgamox also does not scale or interact with any of the other fixes, so no Necrotic and no Spiteful. However, Zolgamox does scale with the key level. So if you notice that Zolgamox feels extra strong on a 22, it's not because it's fortified or tyrannical, it's just simply because the key level is a 22. We go into KUJO here, and worth noting that when you first pull KUJO, you can bring him to the box that drops immediately. What I'm trying to do on every single one of these box drops is line KUJO's shoulder up with the edge. If I'm able to do that and then find a place where I am LOS'd, and I'm still able to execute my rotation, that means that my melee DPS and all my DPS should be able to stand right on top of me and also maintain the rotation. So that way we actually have 100% uptime on KUJO. After this pulse, you'll notice that he goes into his charge phase, and we're going to try to bait the charge to the farthest target, which more often than not is going to be our hunter. And the hunter is going to go ahead and feign death and try to time that so that we only get one charge and it just stops at the hunter. So you can do that with a couple different classes, but it's all proximity based, so they need to be the furthest target away from KUJO in order to get that to work. You'll also have the tank dot on you after each one of those phases as well. That'll need to be cleansed by the healer, otherwise you're going to go down as a tank. You'll notice every single time we get to a box, I kind of try to pull his shoulder even, and then find a spot where I'm able to still hit him. Doesn't work every time, but as you do this more and more, you'll be able to practice it and figure out a good place to line him up. And like I said, as long as his shoulder is even with the crate, you should have a pretty good time on this boss. Again, not overly challenging, but can certainly be long, especially on those tyrannical weeks. So we're going to go ahead and get him wrapped up here, and then we're going to go ahead and get onto the belt. It's worth noting how nice it is to have a warlock. It's not mandatory anymore to have a warlock in this dungeon to execute the final skip, but just skipping this belt right here is a big time saver, and you got a lot of people that just tend to find a way to fall off, especially in pugs. So having that warlock gate can be absolutely huge. So we go ahead and we get through the Alarmabot, we round these guys up, and we go ahead and grab the Dreadlord as well, again because they don't interact with any of the affixes. If you have a priest in your group, it's worth noting that they can MC the mobs that are sending out these squirrels, and you can actually use these squirrels offensively. My hunter is dropping his binding shot pretty liberally here, primarily just to keep the Spitefuls in check. We've got the 3-pack, the next phase is already spawned, so we'll go ahead and knock them out as well. There is some pretty significant pulsing damage on fortified weeks that's worth being aware of, especially if you're in melee. However, I will say that if you are ranged, you can stand kind of where the warlock is standing right now, and you'll be able to have a pretty good time in this room. You'll be able to avoid most mechanics. So on this next pull here with the mini boss, a lot of people tend to get silenced by him because they are not standing in the right place. My best advice is, as a tank, mark yourself and make sure that the group knows that they can follow you based on where the safe spots are. So you'll notice I'm generally the first one to move, and the group will follow me as a stack point here to just completely negate that one talent. We're going to go ahead and get into the maze here. There's a Dreadlord up over to the right that you can grab. We opt not to just because we don't really need it. But if you do decide to grab a Dreadlord and bring him along because you're going faster than we managed to go here in this maze, you can go ahead and bring him right into the next group. There's no reason to just waste single target and waste time on just killing the Dreadlord. So if he were with us right now, we would be pulling right into the group. Did a quick check, made sure everyone was there. Now the one thing you want to do as a tank is to make sure that these mobs are not inside of that yellow shield area. We have an Earth Elemental that's trolling us a little bit right now, and we weren't able to move him out, and we also didn't want to kill the Earth Ellie, so what we did is we ended up killing the shield itself, and then I was able to out-threat the Earth Ellie, and we were able to go from there. But I'm trying to keep them close enough to the shield so that melee can still use the shield, but that the mobs are not actually inside of it, so that they're not getting the extra shield from that. So you want that to be more for your party and not for the mobs. Keep them close, and hopefully you have a smart enough group that is going to be able to leverage those. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this pull up. We'll knock out the Spitefuls, and then go into what is probably the hardest boss in this dungeon. Now for this one, there's a couple of things of note. You'll notice that the first thing that we do is we drag the boss onto the plant that spawns. That plant needs to be a top priority to either stun or DPS down as soon as possible. We choose to do both, stun and get it down as soon as possible by dragging the boss right on top of it. Main reason for that is that it just essentially will free cast onto one of your party members and likely kill them over time if the plant isn't taken care of. Your healer's not in for a good time if you don't take care of that. So every single time one of those plants pop up, we take it very seriously. And then the boss always follows the same pattern. The plant will spawn, you will have those fire or those flames come out, and you need to rotate around the room. And the best thing to do is to kind of go towards the inside of the room as a tank. This gives you room to deal with the cogs that are around the room spinning, and you won't trap yourself when it comes to those orange swirlies on the ground either. You'll have plenty of room to move out of it if you start towards the inside of the room versus trapping yourself against the wall. So that's another thing that you should note. We do end up losing our hunter and then getting him back up, but that we hit a point where there was just so much stuff in a certain area. The hunter thought he was safe, and that wasn't the case. I've seen a lot of people try to game this fight by standing on the stairs 100% of the way. That's a tougher thing to do at higher keys. It doesn't always work. Another thing you can do if you have a short character model is you can slash sit to go underneath these flames. However, I've never actually done it as a tank, and I don't recommend that you do it as a tank because the second you're hit, you're probably just going to end up getting clipped by it anyway. But as long as you avoid the cogs and the orange swirls, you should be in a good position to call this one a GG. Now you'll notice that I made a beeline for the second crawler here. Main reason for that, and the reason why we killed that one first, is because when that crawler dies, it triggers the short RP to send the little ship that takes you from this platform over to the final platform. So we focus that one down, and we cleave onto the other target, and the ship is already here. So this way, as soon as we're out of combat here, we'll all be able to click. If you were to kill the other one first, you wouldn't trigger that RP, so you wouldn't be able to click and get over the next platform. It saves you a couple seconds. It's not anything huge if you don't manage to do it, but just a nice little trick worth noting. Now for this next pull, once you've got everyone in place, you can go ahead and just pull this 3-pack solo. You do need to get an interrupt up. I try to do that with a shield, and unfortunately the shield did bounce, and my healer just let me know, hey, I accidentally double-clicked the transport. So he's flying back over to the other platform now and on his way back to me. So when he gets back, he'll drop his Earth Alley just to kind of relieve the pressure off of me. But I had to keep myself up during that period. So just be aware, the clicking in that area might end up sending you back the other way, and that's certainly not anything that you want to do. I will say, though, that we were able to make pretty quick work of this. Luckily, this was tyrannical, so it wasn't a disaster of a pull or anything like that. But these are the only mobs that you're going to be clearing on this bridge. Now you've got two choices here once you're out of combat. You can either take a Warlock Gate, and you can kind of look at the positioning here to see how this works without pulling that big pack. And if you don't have a Warlock, all you need to do is pop an Invis Potion and walk right by him. This last boss is kind of a pain, not so much in the first phase, but definitely in the second phase. So for this first phase, there's not a whole lot that you need to do other than avoid the blue balls that keep warping around the room, and then avoid the Giga Zap. The Giga Zap is trained on one target in particular, but it is a frontal. So based on where that target is standing, it will hit them. So if they move, the boss will move based on where that person is standing. And if there's anyone between the boss and the target, or behind the target, they're going to get hit by that Giga Zap. So you're just going to want to be really smart about that Giga Zap. Know when it's on you as a tank, know when it's on you as a DPS or a healer, and you should be in pretty good shape. But just always aim that away from the party and make sure you're not going to clip anyone with it. So we're going to go ahead and get into boss transition here. It's worth noting, and Blizzard did say that they fixed this, but on a fix like quaking or something like that, during that stun period, quaking can still actually go off. It happened actually to me this week, and it's not fun. So you're going to want to make sure you're somewhat spread out on those type of weeks. For the Gigazap, once he's in his giant little Mechazord thing here, you're just going to want to make sure you don't move. That's a good general rule for pugging. Unless you have some kind of communication and comms where you can let people know where you're moving and how you're moving, it's generally not worth doing. So right there, I had 2 orbs right by me. I let the team know I needed to move because I didn't want to get boofed off the side. Now we're going to have 2 of our DPS go down here, and there's 2 reasons for that. The first of which is that these orbs are portaling all over the place and that we've got 3 people in range right now. But the second of which is because the magnet that pulls those orbs in spawned right on top of those guys, and that ended up taking them out. We're going to go ahead and just wrap this up with just 3 people up, Tank, Rogue, and Healer. And you'll notice that as we all inch towards the front, these little blue balls also do the same. So if you're in a heavy melee group, these do portal 2 people, and they will definitely knock you off of the side. So you're going to be very, very active if you have a lot of melee players or people who play up close to the boss. We're going to go ahead and finish this boss off now, but hopefully this walkthrough is helpful for you if you're struggling with the Mechagon Workshop in any way, shape, or form. If you have any questions or comments for me, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you and get some feedback as to how useful these guides are.